All right, today I'm talking about four different of the leadership contingency theories. The first one I'm going to talk about would be the contingency leadership theory. It's basically what it's called, by Fred E. Fiedler in the early 1950s. This happened to be the first theory to specify how situational variables interact with the personality and behavior of the leader. So this suggests that the effectiveness of the leader depends on the leader's style and how that fits in the context of their job. He believed that leadership styles were constant for a person based on their personality and behavior, meaning that leaders shouldn't really change their style. Instead, they should change the context of their job to fit the style of leadership that fits them best. Um, the styles of leadership would be task or relationship oriented. Does this match leader style? There's three factors of situational favorableness that leads to more favorable outcomes for a leader. In order of importance, those were leader-member relations, so the better relations between the leader and the employees, the more favorable the outcome for the leader. Also, task structure, so the more structure there was in the tasks, the more favorable outcome for the leader, as well as a position of power. So the more power the leader has, the more favorable their outcome. Once again, he wanted you to change the context of the job to fit your leadership style based on your personality behaviors. Continuum theory was also in the 1950s. This was by Robert Tannenbaum and Warren Schmidt. They believed that leadership itself was on a continuum from boss-centered all the way to subordinate-centered. So leaders fell in the mid somewhere on there. Their choice of leadership style that the leaders had was based on three forces. Those forces had to do with forces in the boss, the subordinates, and the situation at hand. The forces in the boss were the leader's personality, the behavior of the leader, and so the preferred style based on those, where the forces in the subordinates or employees would be what the followers' preferred style of leadership is based on their personality and behavior. Whereas the force of the situation, there's a lot more variables in this one. So it could be like the size of the organization, the structure of the organization, and leadership, what the goals of the organization are. One of the big main ones to take into account is the time available. Some of the decision making may have to be autocratic. If you have like 30 minutes to make a decision, it has to be in. You don't really have time to ask all your followers and get input, so you may have to make autocratic decisions. They had 7 major styles that the leader could choose from in this continuum theory. They range from autocratic decision making that isn't open for discussion, all the way to employees making all the ongoing decisions. One big deterrent of this one is that the model's not really clear on which style to use and when. It just shows 7 different styles. The third one is path goal leadership theory. This one was found by Robert House in the 1970s. This one attempted to explain how leaders' behavior influenced the performance and the satisfaction of the followers. The leaders should use appropriate style, regardless of the preferred traits the leader has. So the first two wanted you to kind of use the style you prefer and change your context of your job. This one says that the job's going to change, you need to change your leadership style. The 4 different styles would be directive, supportive, participative, and achievement-oriented. Directive style works really well if there's a high structure and the ability of the employees is lower and there's an external locus of control in those employees. Where the supportive style works really well when the ability of the employees is really high and they also have a high internal locus of control. They're going to do things they want to do because of intrinsic motivation. Participative can also be for employees that have high ability and internal locus of control. The big difference is that they really includes the employee input in decision making, more of a democratic style of decision making. Whereas the achievement centered style would be the leader would set difficult, although attainable goals, have high expectations of his employees or her employees, and also high levels of rewards that are attainable. This is also for high ability workers. Employees, but with an external locus of control where those rewards are really driving them. In this situation, leader is responsible for increasing the follower's motivation, which can be done by clarifying the path the followers have to available rewards and increasing rewards for followers that match the followers' values and desires. The fourth one is called leadership substitutes theory by Stephen Kerr and Jean Germier. They argued that there were certain situational variables that would prevent the leader and their behavior and style from affecting the followers' attitudes and behaviors. These variables could either act as substitutes for leadership, or they could neutralize that leadership and limit the effectiveness of the leadership's behavior and style. They fell into three different categories. One was the characteristics of followers, which would be like the ability of the employee or the experience. If there's high experience, the need for the leader is lower, the higher ability the need is lower. Or another neutralizer could be the indifference to rewards. So if there's a really reward-based system and the employees are indifferent to them, that would be a neutralizer as well. The characters of the task is the second one, where you'd have like intrinsic versus extrinsic satisfaction. Intrinsic satisfaction can substitute for leadership. High clarity, a high level of routine can substitute for leadership as well. And then the characters of organization, there's a little bit more, once again, variables in this one. There can be flexibility or inflexibility of the organization as a whole. You also might have a lot of close-knit working groups. Spatial distance, close-knit work groups. There's also, which would be a substitute for leadership, and then spatial distance between the leader and followers. So like, if the leader is in his office all day and the followers and the employees are way away, it's going to be hard to do a direct leadership in that sense. The substitutes in a good organization can be strategically put into place to complement leadership, and it almost act as in place of middle management, so they can be a good thing. So how does this relate to my organization? And I work in a high school. So when I'm looking through, I think path goal leadership theory really works best and the one I could use the most. Mostly because in a high school, I can't really change the context of the job and the leadership. Situations arise in a high school, and that's just what's going to be there. And then I would have to change my leadership style to fit that situation, which is what path goal theory says I should do. Once again, I have to be well versed in all the different styles, so I know which one to choose and what ones to choose when. I know one of the big deterrents to this one is that in the real world, things are not as black and white as in the model. It says, if this happens, do this. Where in the real world, it's kind of a gray area. So then I would have to rely on my good decision-making skills, which I believe are a component of a strong leader anyway, and be confident that I'm able to read the situation and know the styles well enough that I can adjust accordingly.